Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to today's edition of Touch 'em All, presented by Sports Map Elite for Thursday, August 4th. I'm joined today by Joe Spano, a little different guest than usual. Joe's been doing an awesome job covering Major League Baseball for Sports Map Elite this season. Really excited to be joined by him today, get a little more of a New York perspective, a little less of a Texas perspective today. Joe, appreciate your time. Looking forward to diving in.
It's a welcome change right there, isn't it?
I don't know. I'm not gonna go so far as to say anything negative about.
Well, I'll say it then. Since I'm up there, I'll say it then. It's a welcome change again. A little bit more Northeast flair and a little bit less Texas flair.
Yeah. Well, how about it? Yeah. So Joe and I, as always, are going to go through every single game on the betting board today. Before we do that, just want to make sure folks know where to find us. SportsMapElite.com. We've been, two of us, BC, have both putting out a ton of baseball content this year. If I do say so myself, it's gone pretty well. So that's $19.99 a month. Go check it out. If you're betting any reasonable amount of money, reasonable meaning more than, let's say, 50 cents a game, you're probably making your money back pretty well there. A ton of football content to come to. I know, Joe and Christelle and others have been working really hard to get going there. So, a lot to look forward to, a lot to find on the site. Come check us out. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and start jumping through the games one by one here. First game on the betting board. It's an early start. This one starts in about half an hour. 9-5-1 Milwaukee Brewers at 9-5-2 Pittsburgh Pirates. Brewers massive favorites here with Brandon Woodruff on the mound, over under 8 runs. Joe, I'll let you go ahead and kick us off here. What do you got on this game?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think this is going to be a low-scoring affair. Woodruff is a hell of a pitcher. Even with the Brewers losing Hader at the back of the bullpen with their trade with the Padres, bullpen's no problem. It's next man up. That's a deep and talented bullpen. I don't think Hader's struggles are a long-term thing. And, I think it'll be good for the Padres this year. They'll fix him up. Nice move for the Brewers long-term, who didn't want to have to pay Hader going forward despite his success. But as far as this game, low-scoring game, Woodruff's a dominant pitcher. The Pirates really can't hit. They are really, really struggling to score runs here. Minus 245 is a number that always scares me. And I think the run line has started to creep out of the 1.5 area into the 2.5 area. So I think you can still find 1.5 in some places, but you're paying some major juice to lay 2.5 runs. So I'm off of the run line. I'm off of the money line here just because I don't see value. And one thing about me when it comes to betting, advanced analytics, I use a lot of things. Advanced analytics, computer models, a bunch of different things go into how I arrive at a pick. But one of the keys is value. Do I think the Brewers win this game? You play this on a computer, they win it 70-80% of the time. But the realities are minus 245 on the money line and laying a run and a half at minus, 150, 160 in a lot of markets.
Yeah.
That's not value I like. And I don't, even at plus 225, I don't like the Pirates here. So the play for me in this one is the under. I don't think the Pirates score very many runs. Brandon Woodruff, I expect to dominate in this performance. I expect the Brewers to put a few runs up today. I don't expect them to go crazy. These early starts off of a night game are traditionally low-scoring contests, especially this early, 12:30 start. So I like the under here. All the signs point to an underplay here on a lot of levels. Not only the analytics, the eye test, also a lot of the smart money has really been all over the under here. We're seeing 47% of the tickets written are on the under, but almost 90% of the money. So that's telling us a lot of sharp action and a lot of big money and a lot of syndicates are all over the under in this spot at 8. So I'm on the under here. I like it pretty strong. I like the under here.
Sounds good. Yeah, and it's good to have a little bit of market analysis too. I know that's something BC and I don't do a ton of. We typically dive into the game analytics and come up with our picks that way. But there's more than one way to do this, and this is where Joe's experience is really valuable to have, and his experience with reading the market. So certainly appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, looking at the matchup here, obviously Brandon Woodruff, like you said, he's having a great season. His expected ERA is right around 3 flat, which is it's a phenomenal mark. He's actually faced Pittsburgh quite a bit this year, 22 innings of work. He has allowed 7 runs. He's had 2 really good starts, 2 kind of just okay starts against them. Little bit of concern for me. He has a 4.70 ERA on the road this year, more than double what he's done at home. So a little bit of concern for him, but you look at his season as it's gone along. This is a guy who in April and May was posting ERA around 5 overall, and since the beginning of June, we're looking at a sub 2. So clearly something clicked. He's figured things out as he's gone along. Some of that might have also just been positive regression coming his way. He hasn't lost a decision since May, so it's like you said, it's hard to look at Pittsburgh here. They're 28th in baseball against right-handed pitching in WRC plus since July 1st. Milwaukee actually second in baseball against righties over that same span. So, I think there's an argument to be made that Milwaukee might get after Zach Thompson quite a bit here. You look at Zach Thompson's baseball savant page, it's absolutely awful. This is a guy who's bottom 20% in almost every category. His expected ERA is around 5.5. You look at his splits, about 6.5 ERA in July, 5.5 at home. 11.5 post All-Star break. So this is a guy who's really seen things turn further and further south as the season's gone along. 13 1/3 innings against the Brewers this year. He's allowed 8 earned runs. So, if I were to look at this game, I'd probably either look at maybe a team total with Milwaukee to go over. But I do agree generally with the thought on the under. So it kind of keeps me off of that. I wanted Brewers first 5, laying the half run. But that comes in at minus 160, and it's hard to see the value there. So yeah, I mean it's going to be a stay away for me. Obviously the Brewers have a ton of advantages here, but it's not a game I'm itching to bet.
Sure, no, and understandable. I just think the combination of Woodruff dominating a Pirates lineup that, as you mentioned, can hit right-handed hitting. So I expect the Pirates to come up very small. Now it just becomes a matter of, do the Brewers do enough lifting to push this over an 8 total? I don't think they do. Combination of things. Again, one of them is historically off the night game, coming back and starting at 12:30. Those bats are flat because the previous day's starter stays at the hotel and relaxes. So the pitchers are fresher than the position players on these early starts. So I think it just takes a while for the Brewers to heat up. But, I see like a 5-1 type game, 4-2 type game. I'm not confident enough, and I don't see value in the money line or the run line. So I do like the under here.
Sounds good. All right, we'll go ahead and jump on to the next one. A little afternoon action from San Francisco today. 9-5-3 LA Dodgers at 9-5-4 San Francisco Giants. My Dodgers with Kershaw on the bump, huge favorites here, minus 200. Over under 8 runs in this one. I'll go ahead and dive in first here. I tend to have a lot of thoughts when the Dodgers are involved. I'll talk about Jacob Junis first for San Francisco. This is a guy whose savant page tells you that he's below average across the board, and really suggests that he's got quite a bit of negative regression coming his way. Season long, his ERA is about 2 3/4, but his expected is actually over 4. Against the Dodgers, he did face them back in June in San Francisco, 5 innings, 2 runs. So not a ton to take from that. The Dodgers are the number 1 team in baseball against right-handed pitching since the beginning of July. They've really been the number 1 team in baseball against right-handed pitching for the better part of 6 years. So it's typically not a team that I want to fade when they're facing a righty. That being said, San Francisco is top 5 in baseball against lefties since early July. Now it's hard for me though to get behind San Francisco despite that split. Losing Darren Ruff was a big deal for them against left-handed pitching. especially against Kershaw. This is a guy who's homered against Kershaw a couple times in the last couple years. And the Giants have actually seen 3 straight left-handed pitchers for the Dodgers in this series and haven't touched any of them. So they're just a team that's in a bad way right now. They're not playing good defense. So I say all this to say I'm definitely not betting on the Giants today. That being said, you look at Kershaw, he struggled a little bit his last 2 starts, 8 1/3 innings, 6 earned against San Francisco this year. But he has an excellent Savant page, ERA of 1.75 in day games this year. It's kind of a split that he's always performed well in. I look at a big bullpen advantage for the Dodgers. Dodgers are kind of a top third, top half type bullpen in the league, and San Francisco has been bottom of the barrel for the better part of 2.5 months. So I think the Dodgers are favored pretty appropriately. I'm not really seeing any value. If I had to play the game, I might look at a Dodgers run line. But looking for a 4-game sweep on the road and a day game getaway game, it's just kind of a weird spot. So I'm backing off.
I don't have anything I like. There are some trends that point towards the over as far as betting trends and sharp money. I don't trust the Giants to carry their weight in that spot. But, despite the early start time out west, you mentioned the Giants bullpen. This is one of those games where the expected negative regression for Junis, you had mentioned how poor his advanced analytics numbers are compared to his actual ERA and things like that. This Dodger lineup could take it to him. I know it's early. I kind of see it. If I were to play anything here, and I'm not officially on this game, here's a spot where you might take the Dodgers team over. They do a little bit of damage against Junis, and maybe they challenge him, and maybe they get a couple of runs early. Don't let him get deep, and then they get into that brutal Giants bullpen and go to town on them. We've seen that happen a number of times before in these Dodgers-Giants games the last couple of months, where if you had the Giants at nice plus numbers and you kind of thought you were sashaying your way to a win, and then all of a sudden the Giants bullpen spits the bit and you're on the wrong end of it. So I wouldn't be shocked if you played a Dodgers team over and it looked like you were in trouble through the first 5, and then the Dodgers went to town as the game moved along as they got into that Giants bullpen. So if I were to go any direction here, I would go Dodgers over, but I am off the game as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think, one of the spots that I've targeted a number of times this year, and today doesn't necessarily quite qualify because Junis has been around a little while, but when the Dodgers are taking on kind of a young green righty, anytime you get an over 4.5 on their team total, it's pretty tempting. All right, so next game we've got Rockies and Padres finishing up this long 5-game series in San Diego. Padres have absolutely dominated it. They're looking for an extended sweep today. Padres minus 290 on the money line. Rockies floating around plus 245, plus 250 here. Low total 7.5. I think a lot of that's Musgrove being on the mound. I do have a bet here. So I'll go ahead and run through that, and then I'll pass it along. I like the Padres on the run line in this one, actually. Padres minus 1.5 comes in at minus 125. I think that's cheaper than it should be, given how steep the money line is. Now, I don't know if that line's moved overnight. It very well might have. I gave it out last night at minus 125 on the run line. You look at Joe Musgrove. I mean, he's been, for most of the season, he's been a Cy Young candidate. He might not quite be in that race as much now. But expected ERA in the low 3s. He dominated Colorado the one time he faced him in San Diego this year back in June. Struggled a little bit at Coors Field against him, but that's a whole different ball game up there. So,
and you can still get that run line at 1.5 minus 130 right now. There are some markets where if you're really brave, and I rarely do this, you can get plus money at MGM at minus 2.5. You can get plus 110 if you're brave.
Yeah, I'm not quite brave enough to do that. But
I'm very rarely brave enough to do that.
Yeah, but minus 130, I think that's still a perfectly reasonable price to play this at. Colorado's a team that really doesn't hit right-handed pitching well, and especially not on the road. So I think you look at Joe Musgrove. This is a guy with a 2.03 ERA in day games this year. 2.29 at home. It's just a really good spot for him to have a dominant start. And Kyle Freeland on the flip side, this is another one of those guys where a lot of his baseball savant metrics land him in the bottom 25% of pitchers. His expected ERA is almost 5. Now, granted, some of that's pitching at Coors Field half the time. He has been a little bit better away from Coors Field. But San Diego's actually seen a lot of him this year. And they scored 11 runs in 17 innings against him over those 3 starts. Obviously, this is a San Diego lineup that's rather revamped after the events of the last couple of days. So I think there's going to be a lot of energy in the ballpark, especially for a midweek day game. I think San Diego comes out and probably handles business with relative ease here.
I agree with you. And there is some value in that run line. And I think that's a very sound play at -1.5 at only -130. I'm not doing -290. I don't care if the Rockies send out 6 guys. That's some big wood to lay, and I'm out on that. I am going to go with the over here. Again, you mentioned going to be juice in the ballpark for the day game. You mentioned the revamped lineup, and boy, is that a revamped lineup, huh? There's a lot of lumber in that lineup going against a real lousy pitcher, no matter what level you use to measure it. Whether you look at traditional stats that measure a baseball pitcher's efficiency, Freelanders aren't good. When you look at his advanced numbers, Freeland's numbers aren't any better. So no matter what metric you use to measure Kyle Freeland as a pitcher, his numbers are lousy. This lineup has a ton of lumber in it. And while I don't think the Rockies will do a lot here, because you mentioned Musgrove and his dominance in day games and how lousy the Rockies hit away from home. That's a real thing. You get them in Coors Field and they can rake a little bit. I'm not saying not everybody, everybody rakes in Coors Field, but they are a different team at home hitting the baseball. They struggle to hit on the road. Petco is a pitcher's ballpark, but I think the lumber company that they're going to be bringing out there today, the juice in the park, I think that the Padres are going to do enough to carry it. It's a low total. I got it at 7.5. It's moved up to 8 already. Betting signals are with me here. When you look, the betting signals are very strong on the over. We're seeing, based on my most recent look at this, about 64% of the tickets being written on the over here. And we're looking at 90+% of the money wagered is on the over here. So, there's a lot of smart money being tracked on this over. So to me, everything comes together to play this over. If you could still get it at 7.5, obviously get it. And I'm seeing it in few markets. More and more markets are pushing towards 8. And if you're going to get it at 7.5, you're going to have to lay somewhere around 120. In situations like this, where we may have an offense that doesn't give us much help, lay the extra wood, get that half a run in your favor. If you're going to go the over, go the 7.5, lay the 120, as opposed to the, in some markets where you're seeing the 8, you're only going to have to lay about 105. Lay the 120, go with the over 7.5, and I think you got a good chance of getting home this afternoon.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. I wonder too, you mentioned obviously the concern with that over if somebody were to play devil's advocate on it is Colorado going to score? I'm looking at a Padres team total at 4.5.
It's a good spot, too.
A little bit juiced to the over, -135, but I think that's an alternative way to look at it that I think could come through. I was on their team total over 5 last night, and they hit it in the first inning, so that was fun. But yeah, I think in general we seem to be in agreement, on the Padres probably handling business today, and I think I think a day game in San Diego actually plays pretty well to overs too. I don't have any stats to back this up, but you don't have that nighttime marine layer coming in yet. It should be pretty warm out and sunny and whatever. So
yeah, that's so that far south in California, people don't realize they look at the early afternoon start and they think that the standard early afternoon start rules kind of apply, the way it is here in the Northeast and around the country. Really doesn't. That marine layer is a big factor in things. What is it? The June gloom, as they call it out west, that kind of is always around. Well, as you get later in the year, it takes a while to show up. So in these early starts, as you say, overs tend to play on these day games better than they do at night, where Petco really turns into a pitcher's ballpark.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to some evening games here on the East Coast. This is a 7:05 Eastern Time game. 9-5.
Should we double back? We got the first game of the double dip. That starts Cardinals and Cubs. Or do you want to get to that later in this rotation?
No, we can jump to that now too. That works for me. That's going to be 9-7-5 Cubs at 9-7-6 Cardinals. This is game one of the two in the doubleheader. Cardinals
just thought it would be a good spot because that game's going to start at, what is it? That's a 1:15 start. Yeah. So I figure this gives people a chance to get their action down and get whatever line value might be left. There ain't much.
No, good call. Absolutely. So Cardinals moderate favorites here, -155, over under 7.5 in this one. I actually don't have a play on this game, so I'll let you go ahead and kick it off.
I like the Cardinals here. I got them earlier than the 155, and I think we've even seen movement off of the 155. I think now, let me take a look. I'll take a look at it quickly. You can still get 155 in some markets, so you're fine there. I think the Cardinals have a small starting pitching edge here in McCullers over Stroman. McCullers has been really good this year. Stroman has been okay, but he doesn't get you any length. Stroman's a 5-inning pitcher, and I don't like that Cubs bullpen at all, especially having traded out some pieces. So I think this is a spot where even if this game is close through the first 5, and I wouldn't be anywhere near the first 5 because I think that these two starters could go hammer and tong the first 5. If Stroman goes deeper than 6, I'd be stunned. I think he's more likely going to be a 5-inning pitcher. I think once you get into that Cubs bullpen, there is a big edge for the Cardinals, and I think that they win this game in the second half of the game. And I like the Cardinals at -155 in this spot.
Okay. Yeah. So the only note I'll make on Stroman, he's been kind of interesting this year because he was awful in April and May. But if you actually taking a look at his July, 20 and a third innings in July, 2 earned runs, 0.89 ERA in the month of July. So certainly if you want to look at the Cardinals, I agree with you that it's got to be full game. It can't be first 5. Like you said, he's not a guy who pitches deep. I think he threw 6 innings each of his last 2 starts, and I don't think he's gone longer than that at all this season. Where I will give him credit, you look at who the teams he's actually faced in July too. He saw the Dodgers, the Mets, the Phillies, and the Giants. So pretty decent set of teams to put up those types of numbers against. That being said, you look at his he came off the IL in early July. So before then he was hurt. And before he was hurt, he wasn't very good. But his last start before he went on the IL was against St. Louis, 4 innings, 9 earned runs. So there might be something to St. Louis just having his number. This is a St. Louis team that they do hit lefties better than righties. So I don't know. They're around average against right-handed pitching. Cubs below average. But I think the fate of the Cubs bullpen is the absolute right look. I mean, it is a bullpen that ranks number 1 in baseball, believe it or not, since mid-July. But that's before they traded away Chris Martin, Michael Given, Scott Effross, David Robertson, all their good pitchers. Yes. They've jettisoned away.
Is it true that you're closing for them now?
I mean, it's a rumor. They're trying to underpay me, so they're going to have to pony up.
I mean, that bullpen, like you said, before the deadline, that was a strong bullpen.
Yeah.
And, whether it be traditional measures or advanced metrics. Now, the problem is none of those guys are there.
Right.
Those guys that got you to that point are all gone. So you basically have a AAA Cubs. You have an Iowa Cubs bullpen.
Yeah.
Problem is they're taking on a Major League Baseball team. So I think this game is hammer and tong early. You could even see the Cubs with a small lead through 5 or 6. But I think these Cardinal bats get to that Cubs bullpen, and if they're not winning early, they'll definitely win it when it counts.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's the right way to look at the game. I don't have an official play on it, but I would certainly lean to St. Louis. Just to kind of talk through Miles Mikolas too, looking at his Baseball Savant page, this is a guy who's always hovering right around the 65th percentile of starting pitchers. Like, he's kind of just that guy where he's above average. He doesn't walk anyone, which kind of makes you rest easy when you want to back him as a better, because he's not going to go out there and walk the shop and beat himself and put himself in bad situations. So as a result, a lot of times a bad start from Miles Mikolas is 3 runs, maybe 4. So he's not a guy that's going to go out there and give you 8 scoreless over and over, but
it gives you a quality start. He's a 6-7 inning guy. He's going to give up 3 runs. He's a great middle of the rotation. He's a great number 3, number 4 type starter, but he's going to get you a little bit of length. He's not going to dominate, but he's also he's not prone to implosions.
Exactly.
There are not very many 8-run outings on Mikolas's resume.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good spot. He's faced Chicago twice this year, 11 innings, 5 earned. So, 3.58 ERA in July. That's about par for the course for him. 2.31 at home. So, yeah, I mean, I don't mind it at all. I think it's a consistent guy, type of guy you want to be backing generally. All right, let's go ahead and hit game 2 of Cubs Cardinals while we're at it. That's 9-6-1, 9-6-2. We're going slightly out of rotation order here, but I think the people will be okay. Cubs once again going to be underdogs. Cardinals -165 in game 2. This is a game that's, I think it's a 7:45 Eastern time tonight.
Correct.
I'm all over the Cardinals here in 2 different ways in game 2. I'm going to be playing the Cardinals team total over 4.5. That comes in at even money. And I'm going to be on the Cardinals laying the run line -1.5. That comes in at +130. Reasons why the Cubs are essentially going with a bullpen game. We just talked about how thin that bullpen's become. It's going to be a lot of Iowa Cubs relievers entering the game. Sean Newcomb, who's starting the game, is an Iowa Cubs reliever. He's made 12 appearances at AAA Iowa. 11 of them have been out of the bullpen. He's only pitched 9 1/3 innings in the majors this year and somehow managed to give up 12 earned runs on 6 walks and 16 hits. So, obviously, there's not a lot of reason for confidence with him. Even if he does come out and pitch well, which he won't, he'll maybe give them 2 or 3 innings. You look at his last appearance; it was June 12th against the Yankees, 5 earned in 1 inning. So, look, he's not too much of the handicap because he's not going to be out there very long. I think the reality is you're looking at game 2 of a doubleheader. Cubs bullpen will already probably have been used somewhat in game 1, and it's a bad bullpen taking on a decent Cardinals offense. So I think the Cardinals are going to get after it, score plenty of runs in this game, over 4.5. I think that number should be 5.5. So that's why I'm going to be on the over there. I also think Jose Quintana is not a guy I usually like to back, the starter for the Cardinals. In his time in Pittsburgh, he was very lucky. You look at his Baseball Savant page, his expected ERA is over 4. He's a guy who I've been calling for negative regression on most of the season. He started to see some of that in early July, but it's a good spot for him. He's actually faced the Cubs 3 times this year, and he's dominated them. 16 innings of work, only 3 earned runs. His last 2 starts, he's thrown 12 2/3 innings, has not allowed a run. So we're catching him hot against a team that hasn't hit him well in the past. Cubs are a bottom 3rd team in baseball against left-handed pitching since the beginning of July. So I think just in general, this is a bit of a smash spot for me on St. Louis in game 2 to go ahead and win the game by 2+ and score over 4.5. What do you think?
I love that run line play. I absolutely I love both plays, actually, and I'm in a 100% accord. And you've watched me. I'm not the biggest run line guy out there. More often than not, I'd rather just play the money line because Baseball's a funny game, and trying to predict teams winning by 1.5 is always so tricky. So I'm not a big run line guy, but in this spot, I love it for all the reasons you entailed, and I like the Cardinals over on the team total. I mean, by the time you get to the 6th inning, I mean, I don't know who they're going to be throwing out there. Because Stroman doesn't go. We talked about it in game 1. Stroman's not going deep. He's going to get you 5 or 6 innings. I don't know how hot it's going to be in St. Louis today because you get heat. That factors in on those pitchers and their length. So Stroman doesn't get you length in game 1, which means I'm guessing you're going to see at least 3 guys out of that pen in game 1. And then you got to follow it up with a bullpen game. What happens by the time you get to the 6th inning? I mean, it's going to be bad. It's going to be glorified batting practice. So I love that team over. And here's a run line spot. -165 is not prohibitive here. It's pricey, but not prohibitive.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is a good spot to save some juice and take some risk laying a 1.5 because I think you'd be pretty comfortable that the Cardinals will win this one by 2 runs. The only variable here, and this is where this is always tricky, Dalton, when it comes to the back end of a double dip. It's what lineup they actually put out there. We really don't know. And we don't know until a couple hours before game time. So that's why it's always tricky a lot of times doing what we do where we have to we're giving people time to go to the betting window, as it were. These can be tricky spots depending on who gets rested. Because all of a sudden, if the Cardinals send out, going back to a previous, they send out the old Sunday lineup and there's no bats out there, could make it tricky. But your general premise is spot on in both of these plays, and that would be the direction I would go.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'm glad we're on the same page with that one. So then heading out, we're going to head back into rotation order. 957 Nationals, 958 Phillies from Citizens Bank Park in Philly today. Going to be Daniel Espino, Noah Syndergaard. Phillies are a massive favorite here, -225, over under 9. I don't like this game at all. I don't have anything on it.
I don't either. I hate to cop out like that. If I were to go any direction, just because of the value, the Nationals at +205. But I don't like it.
Yeah.
This is one of those you hold. If you say you're doing it because the value in this spot is on the Nationals at +205, but if you do it a half a unit, hold your nose while you're doing it.
Right.
I know I'm not laying -225 with Noah Syndergaard. No way.
Yeah,
so
I completely agree.
There's not a lot that I like here. This is one of those. There's 13 games today, I think, something like that. There's 13 games today. Your money, you don't have to have action on all of them. This is one where if you really feel like you got to watch this game, go ahead. There's better games to watch, but certainly don't bet on it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, so just to kind of go through some of the notes on it, I mean, Daniel Espino for Washington, I think, his results have been pretty okay as a starter dating back to last year. He's got an ERA under 4 this year. So, I mean, that's all fine and good, but this is a guy who's due negative regression. He's got an expected ERA around 4 3/4. The good news for him is he doesn't walk anybody. Problem is when he gives up contact, the ball is hit really hard. You look at his recency, it's not good. I mean, 5.82 ERA in July, 3.2 innings, 4 earned against Philly the one time he saw them this year. You look at his last few starts, he's allowed 4 or more earned runs in 4 of 6. So this is a guy who's been very gettable. And he also faced Philly in June, 5 innings, 3 runs. So I think Philadelphia is pretty comfortable here offensively. But Espino's not, he's not Patrick Corbin bad, right? I mean, this is a guy who is a major league pitcher. He looks okay. I think then I start looking at the two teams in terms of the matchup. Washington's bullpen has actually been a lot better than Philadelphia's over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Philly has some reinforcements coming in, so we'll see how that ends up looking. Both these teams are below average against righties since July 1st, so to me that adds a little bit of unpredictability in terms of expecting one team to explode offensively over the other. And you talked about it with Syndergaard.
I know the Nationals ain't exploding on anybody. They've traded away. There's not much hitting left.
No.
Yeah. I understand you got Luke Voit back in one of the trades, and Luke Voigt's a nice player. It's just knowing what he is. Yeah. Luke Voigt's a third, fourth banana type hitter. The guys that you traded out are much higher profile hitters in your lineup. And when you look at this current lineup, Nelson Cruz and Luke Voit ain't enough to put up a lot of runs.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, and I think on the same token, though, Syndergaard, like you said, at minus 225, there's no reason to want any part of that. Just looking through his Baseball Savant page, his expected ERA is 4.22, so nothing super exciting there. No. 5.17 in all games he's pitched away from Anaheim this year. I don't know if that's because he was really comfortable on Anaheim's mound specifically, or whether it's because he likes pitching at home. I know Philadelphia is a ballpark that's not going to lend itself to good pitching statistics the way Anaheim might. No. And I'm not calling Anaheim some bona fide pitcher's park, but it's a better pitcher's park than Philly. So
it's a much more balanced ballpark. And, again, we don't like anything here, but I think going forward, team unders on Washington or unders in general on Washington bear watching, especially on days where either Cruz or Voit are out of the lineup.
Right.
If they don't have both of those guys, and do they have any power at all?
Yeah, not a whole lot.
I mean, without those two guys, they're the 70s Royals without speed. And without George Brett. That's a pretty bad base. That's a pretty bad offense. So again, nothing here to play today, but tomorrow's another day.
Yeah, absolutely worth it. And look, they've had a top 10 bullpen over the last few weeks too. They've got some guys like Finnegan and Arana who have actually been pitching pretty well. So I think there is some reason to look at them that way when they've got a decent starter on the mound, like let's say a Josiah Gray in some spots in the future. I absolutely agree with that. All right, Braves Mets, big one in the NL East here. 959 Atlanta, 960 New York. Over under 8 runs here. Mets a very small favorite, minus 120. Pretty good pitching matchup. Kyle Wright and Carlos Carrasco going at it in this one. I don't have an official play here. Do you have a play on this game?
I don't. Again, this is one of those games where watch it. It's going to be a good baseball game. If I were to have a small lean, despite it being a very good pitching matchup, my small lean is on the over. And again, this is another one that has to do with betting signals. All the betting signals are pointing towards this over. I'm not prepared to give it out as an official play because that's all it's based on. It's only a lean at this point. And this is one of those that I would have to dive back into deeper, and I might wait until a lot closer to game time if I give this over out, because I'm waiting for some late betting signals. But right now, betting signals point towards the over. There's nothing else I see that points towards that. And there's really nothing else that I see that gives either of these sides a decisive edge. I just think it's going to be a hell of a baseball game.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Taking a look at the two starting pitchers, Kyle Wright's had the better season between the two. But if you look at the expected numbers for each, they're almost the exact same guy. The expected ERAs are 3.94 for Carrasco, 3.91 for Kyle Wright. So not a whole lot of separation here between the two starters. You look at the two teams against right-handed pitching since July 1st. Atlanta is 6th, New York is 7th. You look at the two bullpens since mid-July. Atlanta 15th, Mets 10th. So you're really splitting hairs to find not only a difference between these starters, but a difference between kind of the platoon matchup, the bullpens. There's just like when I look for a reason to bet a team, I'm looking for a specific edge, right? I need to have a hard reason, and there's just nothing here. Couple notes, Carlos Carrasco has been pitching really well. He's got a 0.90 ERA in July. 8 shutout innings against Atlanta on May 3rd. So couple signals for me with him that he might actually have quite a good outing today. But the Braves are not an offense I want to be fading right now in general.
No.
You look at Kyle Wright. I talked about his Savant page says that he's got some negative regression coming. he's had a pretty good July. He had a pretty good July. ERA around 2.5. 2 earned runs allowed exactly in each of his last 3 starts. So that's kind of who he is. I could kind of make an argument for a first 5 under here, but these are 2 offenses that are hitting well. And I don't really care to get in front of it. So, like you said, I think it's going to be a good ball game. It's going to be a good series. But
yeah. It's a good ball. And, where I could see maybe if there's one edge and maybe if something that helps lead to a full game over, the Mets' lower leverage relievers, I'm not, the higher leverage relievers I kind of like. I like a lot. Diaz has had maybe the best year of any closer in baseball this year. Some of the Mets' lower leverage relievers I'm not crazy about. And I could see Atlanta going to town there.
Yeah.
So, again, things we look for. Again, I don't have an official play. I'll take a small lean on the over. If I come to find that there's some things I really like on this, you might end up seeing it as an official play written up a little closer to game time. But as it stands now, get your popcorn, put on the game, watch. It's going to be a hell of a baseball game. Agreed.
All right, we're heading into the American League now. We got a day game between the Oakland A's and the Anaheim Angels. One note on the show, I don't ever refer to the Angels as Los Angeles. That's a big sticking point for me. I just don't do it. If they're ashamed of Anaheim, I want to remind them that they play in Anaheim.
Let's go old school. We'll call them the California Angels.
That's fine too. That's fine too because it's accurate.
Very 1970s, but that's what they were called when I was growing up.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, they actually play in California, so it makes sense.
Yes, they do.
But anyway, so Angels small favorites here, -120. Paul Blackburn on the mound for the A's against Jansen Junk for the Angels. Over under 8.
That's a hell of a pitcher's name.
Yeah. I think this game sucks. I really. Yes. I even my notes on it are a lot fewer than I normally have. I don't have a play here. You look at Jansen Junk; he's barely pitched in the bigs. 6 scoreless innings, so that's cool. But 5 of them were against Kansas City. I don't know. I mean, I just don't have enough information with him to feel good about a wager one way or another. So then I look and I say, okay, well, how do I feel about Blackburn, Oakland, whatever? Blackburn's been awful recently. ERA around 7.5 in July. I think ever since he had that great start that got him a bid to the All-Star game, and awesome, good for him. But it's been rough. That being said, 11 innings pitched against Anaheim, 3 earned. And that was actually back when Anaheim was still playing well in early May. Anaheim is awful. They're the worst team in baseball against both righties and lefties since really mid-June. So it's an offense that gets shut out.
Wow. That's pretty low. What are your splits like? Well, they're bad against both sides. That's tough. Yeah.
It's really bad. And especially since Mike Trout's been out, now they trade away Brandon Marsh. Obviously, Rendon isn't available. I mean, they've had Louis Rengifo batting 3rd or 4th in that lineup almost every night. I mean, it's bad. And so, I don't have any faith in Paul Blackburn. I would love to back Oakland. Like last night, I took Oakland at +205, and that was a fun one. But part of it is Oakland's bullpen actually ranked 6th in baseball since July 15th, and while they sold, they only sent away one guy. And I get Lou Trevino. Yeah, Trevino's a big part of what they do, but they still have guys, Zach Jackson, AJ Pug, guys who have actually pitched pretty well. Anaheim, bottom 3rd bullpen in the league. So I would lean Oakland just because I think Oakland is legitimately the better of these 2 teams right now, but I'm not playing this game.
I've got no play here, and it's for all of the reasons that you entailed. There's not much appeal. I don't see any line value. There's no betting trends, no sharp. There's nobody going in any direction here. This is one of those games, if you're like me and you and have the MLB.TV package, you actually hope that they'll find some reason to black out the game. Because it's not a good game to bet, and it's an even worse game to watch.
Agreed. All right. Next game we've got 965 Houston Astros, 966 Cleveland Guardians from Progressive Field in Cleveland. Astros pretty big favorites here with Verlander on the bump, over under 8. I do have a play in this one, but I'll let you go ahead and kick us off. What are you thinking here?
Well, here's something that's interesting. The sharp money went completely against how I saw this game. because when you look at this matchup and you look at the pitching matchup, Verlander and Plesac, obviously when we handicap baseball, one of the first things we go to is starting pitching matchups. Well, this matchup is kind of out of balance. Verlander has a huge advantage. It's kind of like comparing ice cream to horse manure. But it's interesting. When you go and look at the betting signals, we're seeing a ton of money on the Guardians at plus 165. As strange as that may seem, 22% of the tickets written on the Guardians at plus 165, 54% of the money wagered on the Guardians at plus 165. Now, I don't see it myself. I tend to follow sharp money. It's not my god. I have other things I do, like you, traditional measures, advanced analytics, eye test, all those things, computer models. The only thing that points towards the Guardians is the sharp money. Everything else points overwhelmingly towards the Astros. But even with Verlander, $1.90 is kind of rich for me. I don't have an official play here, but just because of the conflict between what my eyes tell me, what everything else tells me, and what the betting signals tell me, that's kind of a cue for me to stay away. But I would have to guess conventional wisdom would like the Astros on the run line to mitigate some of that 190 juice, wouldn't they?
Yeah, so I think that is the conventional way to look at it. I think I may have some answers on why Cleveland's taking sharp money here, just in terms of like things that, because I'll tell you this first off. I'm on Houston first 5 run line, so laying the half run at minus 130, and there's a reason I'm not on the full game run line, and it's because you look at Cleveland. That bullpen has been third best in baseball since 2015. Nobody's touching the Cleveland bullpen. If they have a lead late, they go to Emmanuel Clase and the game's over. So, I don't really want to mess around with the bullpens here. Houston's bullpen's been fine. It's been 12th in baseball over that span, but it hasn't been what Cleveland's has been. And I think the other thing, Cleveland is 8th in baseball against right-handed pitching since July 1st. So they've actually been pretty good in that split. And I could see an argument for them scoring a couple against Verlander, but for me, the starting pitching matchup is too much to ignore. Maybe this is a square way to look at it, but you look at what Verlander's done this year, it's been absolutely ridiculous. 1.01 ERA in July. That's 26 2/3 innings, allowing only 3 runs. He's just been absolutely nasty. And that's not a guy I want to get in front of right now. And then you look at Plesac. I mean, this guy. Baseball savant it's awful. He's bottom 10% across the board. Expected ERA 5.52, and you look at what he's done against Houston. 4 2/3 on May 24th. He allowed 7 earned runs to the Astros in that one. His ERA in July is hovering around 6 with an 0-4 record. Not that we look into pitchers' records too much, but this is just, for me, I think there's a massive starting pitching advantage for Houston and a small lineup advantage for Houston through the first 5. I think them to be leading at the end of 5 ought to be more like minus 150, minus 160. So I'm happy to lay 130 for them to be leading at the end of 5 on that first 5 run line. But on a full game basis, if Houston doesn't get after Plesac and it's 3-2, 3-1, 4-2, 4-3 through 5 innings, Cleveland plus 165 still is going to have a chance, just because that Cleveland bullpen's been so good, and I think they offensively have been a little better than people give them credit for.
That's interesting, and again, it's amazing when you talk about Zach Plesac. He's 2-9 with a 4.33 ERA, and he's been pitching in good luck. That's all you need to know. Yeah. And again, so I think you've answered the questions as to why we're seeing sharp money on the Guardians at plus 165. It's all to do with the back 4 innings of this game. So as somebody who's, as you said, in many ways, the square bet would be all over the Astros. You're mitigating the one edge that the Guardians have by taking the first 5. You're eliminating some juice by laying a half a run, because if they're up by 1 run after 5 innings, you're cashing. So I like your approach to the game. I also like your explanation as to why there's so much action on the Guardians at plus 165. For me, I'm out. The conflict between what I see and the betting signals scares me off. And I'm also not huge because, again, baseball being what baseball is, I don't do a lot of first fives. I really don't. I don't do a lot. I don't do a lot of nerfy. I don't do a lot of yes first run. I just, because both teams are in theory out there playing to win. So I don't know. It's never served me well. So it's something I always stay a little clear from compared to a lot of people. But again, yeah, I think if you're going to play this game, it's the way to play it.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, you're not gonna like a few of my plays though as we go through this, because I've got some fun coming with nerfies and team to score.
No, first. I know you and Brandon are both big on nerfy, and you're big on first five. I particularly don't like nerfy because I think that I don't think there's a lot of value in it. It may work. I just don't think there's a lot of value. I think the books hold a lot on nerfy. That's always been my thought.
Yeah, I think the books definitely do hold a little more on nerfy. I mean, like most of them you'll look at, you'll see minus 120 to one side, minus 110 to the other. That tells you all you need to know, right? I think with nerfies, I've got to really like it. You know, and it's a higher variance bet by definition too. So, you know, you'll hardly ever see me put 2 units on a nerfy for that.
Okay, reason. Fair enough.
But all right, next game, 9-6-7 Tampa Bay Rays, 9-6-8 Detroit Tigers. Rays relatively heavy favorites here, minus 170. Tigers plus 150 at home, over under 8. We've got Jeffrey Springs and Drew Hutchison on the mound. I'm going to go ahead and dive right in here. I've got a play I feel pretty strongly about in this one, and it's Detroit first 5 innings team total over 1.5. Detroit to score 2 runs in the first 5, and here's why. I look at Jeffrey Springs this year. He's got a 2.70 ERA. That's great, right? Expected ERA 3.7. So clearly some negative regression due for him. And I think recently it's really starting to show up. You look at his July 4.73, 3 or more earned runs allowed in 4 of his last 5 starts. And that's despite averaging 3 to 4 innings per start. He's not a guy who goes deep. Tampa doesn't handle their pitching that way. And so, you know, and normally with Detroit, they're a team that I don't like to back their offense, but if there is a spot to, it's against left-handed pitching. They've absolutely killed lefties this year relative to what they've done against righties. You look at what they've done since July 1st. They're 5th in WRC plus in that category. They're about 20% above average against left-handed pitching. So, you know, to me, I think Jeffrey Springs is a guy who is overvalued, and I think this number reflects that at 1.5. I would have made it 2.5. And, you know, I'm coming in at minus 105 with it. So, you know, all we're asking is for Jeffrey Springs to do what he's done over and over recently, which is give up at least 2 or 3 runs in the first 5 innings. And it might go worse than that given the way Detroit's hit lefties. So that's the play for me. Looking at the flip side of it, Drew Hutchison for Detroit, not exactly a pitcher who inspires a ton of confidence either. I would be leaning over here. I don't like overs in that ballpark all that much. I also don't like overs involving Tampa. And Detroit's got a top 10 bullpen since mid-July too, so kind of keeps me off of it. But looking at Hutchison, his expected ERA is around 5. He doles out a ton of walks, 4.5 in July. You know, typically a guy who will go 4 to 6 innings per start. So, you know, he doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence either. I kind of like Detroit at plus 150. I got him at plus 155 somewhere else too. I kind of like Detroit on the full game money line. But I think the best way to look at it, just so I can avoid Drew Hutchison killing me, is Detroit first 5 team total over 1.5.
You know, I like that play. Obviously, you know, I don't play as much first half, first 5, first 3 type stuff as you guys do, but it's a sound play. I'm on that over. I know Comerica is not a great place for overs. You know, it's where home runs go to die. But everything you mentioned about the fact that if you're going to get any runs with Detroit, it's when they're facing left-handed pitching. And you mentioned, you know, Springs has been ordinary. You know, you look at the ERA and it looks nice, but recent vintage, he gives up a few runs, and they get him out of there after 3 innings. You know, and then so it eats up some bullpen. It's in essence a bullpen game every time he comes out there. He goes deeper than most openers, but he's really just a glorified opener. And as a result, the Tigers are hard. They're not an easy team to get behind anytime you got to get over. But Drew Hutchinson doesn't inspire any confidence for me. The Rays are hard to get behind in these over situations. But this is one where I wasn't alone. We're seeing a lot of sharp money on the over in this spot. 80% of the total money wagered on only 45% of the tickets played are on the over. And I'm checking multiple sources on where I track money movement, and they all are seeing dominant big dollars on the over as far as in comparison to the percentage of tickets. And that's one way we track sharp action. I've also heard from some sharps that like this over. So this is a spot we're looking at. We like this over. We're piggybacking on some of what you said, but we think despite how good the Detroit bullpen is, we think there's going to be enough early to get this over the 8.
Yeah, and one more supporting factor there too. Tampa's actually top 5 in baseball against righties since July 1st. Since July 1st. So
they don't seem like it because they they're one of those teams when you need them to score runs, they don't. I've had them in over situations where they were the complementary piece a couple of times and they forgot to score any runs. So that could happen, but there's enough support here in enough different avenues that I kind of like this over here, and I think we get it done.
And something else we didn't mention, we talked about Detroit's bullpen and how good it's been. They just traded away Michael Fulmer. That was a big piece for them. So, we'll see. But yeah, I lean over there as well. I think that's the right way to look at it. I've got 2 different plays in Toronto and Minnesota. This is 9-6, 9-9-7-0. Blue Jays at Twins. Blue Jays very small road favorites here, over under 7.5. Alek Manoah and Sonny Gray on the bump. I'll let you go ahead and lead it off, and then I'll tell you what I've got.
I don't have a lot here. Again, it's a hell of a pitching matchup. I've got conflicting signals all over this game. I think it's going to be a pretty entertaining game. This is one of those for me where, you got 2 top of the rotation pitchers, and I think it's going to be a fun watch. So I really don't have a great play here. To me, this is grab the popcorn, grab the remote, and enjoy. So if you've got plays here, run with this bad boy.
Sounds good. Well, I'll start with no runs in the first inning at -125. Love it.
Based on frontline starters, I can see it. It's a play I just don't use, so it's not in my toolbox. But based on what we're looking at here, it's a sound play.
And I'll tell you why else I think it is. It's not just that they're frontline starters. You look at one of the things I like to look at is like the deep splits on a pitcher, right? Inning by inning, left, right, ballpark, whatever, right? Both of these pitchers have first inning ERAs on the season of under 2, which is rare, right? I mean, a lot of pitchers, if you're going to get to them, you get to them in the first inning. Both of these guys come out sharp game to game. And I think the reason we're getting value at -125 is just because these are 2 pretty strong offenses. But I would have made it closer to -140, -150. I think there's a very strong chance that we come through with that. I also like the Blue Jays on the money line at -120. I think you look at these 2 teams, the Blue Jays are just a little bit better across the board. I think Alek Manoah is a little bit better than Sonny Gray. The Blue Jays bullpen is a decent amount better than the Twins bullpen. And the Blue Jays lineup is a little bit better than the Twins lineup. The Blue Jays are the number 2 team in baseball behind the Dodgers, or excuse me, number 3 team in baseball now. The Brewers passed them yesterday. The Blue Jays are the number 3 team in baseball against right-handed pitching since July 1st. They smash righties. Sonny Gray's been good, but he's not necessarily spectacular if you look at his baseball savant page. His expected ERA is around 3.5, and he's pitched you an ERA around 6 since the beginning of July. So a lot of that did have to do with early July struggles. He's been better of late, but I think Toronto's a lineup that will expose the warts of any right-handed pitcher they're taking on, and I think there's a pretty good chance they get to Sonny Gray a little bit here. looking at Alek Manoah, this is a guy who is obviously pretty elite. He's been really good across Savant. What I love about Alek Manoah is, and it's the same reason that I like playing him against the Yankees. I like playing him against the Red Sox and the Astros. He gets up for good teams. And so I decided to kind of look into that on a career basis. His ERA is 1.6 lower against teams with winning records in his career. So what that tells me is I don't know if he spends more time on his scouting. I don't know if he comes out there just a little more fiery, but he pitches way better against teams with winning records. The Twins are obviously a first place team pitching on the road. I think he'll come out and pitch well. So I like Toronto better on the money line, -120. I think that's nice and cheap to get a team as talented as they are. And I think we'll cash the Nerfy. So I'm hoping to bring home both.
I like the Nerfy better than anything else here. And again, it's not in my toolbox, but a couple of things. The Twins, obviously, up until the deadline, the Blue Jays had the edge in the bullpen. The additions the Twins made to that bullpen, I think, really changes that. They added Michael Fulmer, and they added Baltimore's closer.
Yeah,
so that's big. And I think suddenly that equalizes those bullpens. And since July 1st, the Blue Jays, no question, they've been great offensively against right-handed pitching, and it's a great offense. They've been a little quiet these last couple of weeks. It hasn't, I don't have hard numbers on it, but they have been a little spotty offensively the last couple of weeks compared to what they've been most of the year.
They've been a little spotty, but they're 14-3 in their last 17 games.
Yeah. The offense has been a little spotty.
Yeah.
They've been winning games. I get all of that. So I just wasn't nuts about this matchup, and I get why you like it. It just didn't do it for me.
Sure.
And maybe on a second visit, because I'm not above with it being this early in the day, taking that second visit based on additional intel I got right here, and maybe looking at this again, and maybe I add a play. I'm not above that. I look at things right up until game time, and I add things sometimes. It happens.
Oh, yeah. I do the same thing every play. I always tell people on this show, I say, look, stay up on my Twitter. I might throw out a free play before the game or whatever if there's something that comes to mind late, something that changes late. Obviously, we don't even have lineups yet for most of these games either. So
right.
A lot.
So these are factors. We have to do some things. We have to do some things that we otherwise may or may not do. And it's always an exchange.
Mm-hmm.
It's line value versus finality. Because sometimes we see something, if we don't move on it early, we lose a lot of our value. Mm-hmm. So that's always the never-ending battle that we're in and the conflict that we're in. I'm sometimes, from a pure betting standpoint, I'm willing to wait out a lot of that in an effort to get line. I'm to get some finality. I'll lose a little line value and maybe don't jump as early as some in an effort to get some finality based on some things I'm looking at. That's just me. Everybody does it differently.
Yeah, I don't think there's like a right or wrong answer there. I think it's funny some nights, because I typically will do my handicapping between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. That's just kind of when I do it for the next day. And I'll sit there and, sometimes I'll look through a game and I'll say, oh, that line's not going to be there in the morning. And then it is. Sometimes I'll look at a game and I'll think, I like that side. I'm not too worried about it. Let's wait and see what happens. But I find myself trying to guess, and half the time I'm wrong. So, it's tough. But all right, next game we've got 9-7-1 Chicago White Sox, 9-7-2 Texas Rangers from Arlington here. White Sox -135 favorites. Texas Rangers. Cole Reagan's making his major league debut for the Rangers. Johnny Cueto on the mound for the White Sox. I'll let you lead it off. I don't have a play on this one.
I'm gonna go with the White Sox here. Again, the Rangers have been ice cold. And sometimes in baseball, it's just sound business to follow streaks and slumps. Teams that lose keep losing. Teams that win keep winning. Teams that go under keep going under. Teams that go over keep going over. That's just the way baseball is. The Rangers are now lost 3 in a row. They're sending a rookie making his major league debut against an unspectacular but solid Johnny Cueto. Yeah, Cueto's not great, but he's a guy, he's one of those guys. He's at this stage of his career, he's a strong, middle of the rotation guy who is going to drive you crazy when you bet on him because he's a tough watch, but he's going to grind you through 6. He's going to give up 2 or 3. And I think that's enough in this spot just because you got the Rangers sending the pitcher making his major league debut. And I'm not crazy about I think the White Sox have the better lineup. I think everybody would agree there as well. So I like the better lineup with the veteran starter that I kind of know what I'm going to get. We've mentioned this a couple of times about certain pitchers. We kind of know what we're going to get. Cueto's going to throw 105 pitches over 6 innings. He's going to leave a small village on base, but he's probably going to give up between 2 and 3 runs. And the game's going to take 3.5 hours. So I'll lay the 135 and go with the White Sox.
Yeah, no, I think it's the right side to be looking at for sure. I think part of it for me is I'm kicking myself because I was leaning Chicago at minus 124 last night, and I just didn't quite pull the trigger. And now I'm looking at a minus 135, and it just leaves.
Props are on it. They're going to push it further up, so get on it now if you're going to get on it.
Okay, I just might. We'll see. I mean, yeah, like the thing with Cole Reagans, I took a look at kind of what he's done in the minors. He's pitched at both Frisco and Round Rock this year for Texas. 3.04 ERA between the two. He's been really good at both levels. He's an interesting guy, though. He was drafted 30th overall in 2016. So this guy drafted first round 6 years ago, just now making his major league debut. And you look at Texas's prospect list, he ranks 28th. So if you're, it's not exactly the best farm in baseball, and you're ranking 28th on that farm after 6 years after being a first round pick, that tells me they don't think that highly of him in general. But his results have been pretty okay. Looking at some of the splits here, Chicago 9th against righties since July 1st, Texas 16th. Bullpens, Chicago 16th, Texas 21st since mid-July. So advantages for Chicago all over the place. I think what you said about Cueto across the board is spot on. He's been the same guy for a number of years now where, I mean, I watched it for years with him in San Francisco. He's going to go out there. He's going to battle through 5 or 6 innings, ton of base runners. He's not going to give up all that much. He's been pitching well recently, too. 4 of his last 5 starts, he's allowed 2 or fewer, 2.12 ERA in the month of July. Obviously, Chicago is not great, but Texas is kind of in a free fall right now. So, yeah, I mean, the only way I can look at Chicago on the money line, it's just a matter of whether, with everything else I've got on the board, whether I find it worth playing. But I think it's definitely the right way to look at it.
Perfect. And now we take it home, the final game of the slate, huh?
Yep. We've got the Red Sox and the Royals from Kansas City, and I've got 2 more plays to finish the day here on this one.
All right, because I got nothing on this. I got conflicting signals all over the place because I am down on both of these clubs. I'm very down on the Red Sox. They don't hit anymore, and they don't pitch. I don't like anything about them. Got a lousy bullpen. They don't hit. And the Royals, well, they're the Royals. So take it away because I've got very little on this one.
Cool. I've actually got quite a bit. And you're right about the Red Sox offensively in general. The Red Sox can hit lefties, though. At least there's that. They don't hit righties at all. They're bottom 3 in the league against righties. But against lefties, I think they're right around 12th since the beginning of July. So not spectacular, but top half of the lead. And they're facing a lefty in Chris Bubich today who has awful advanced metrics.
Yeah.
That being said,
he's awful on any metrics, advanced, basic. It's not like his regular numbers point to something much better. He's pitching to an almost 6 ERA. So,
right. Well, here's the thing, though. I am higher on Chris Bubich than I am on Nick Pivetta right now. Okay. And the reason why, and I'll give away the 2 plays first. I like the Royals to score first at plus 150, and okay. I like the game over 9 at plus 105. I prefer to get an 8.5. I think those are all gone, but over 9 at plus money, I do like it. Looking at Nick Pivetta, his baseball savant advanced metrics and his actual numbers have steadily deteriorated as the years gone along. He's now viewed as just about a 25th percentile starting pitcher. I think he's worse than that because if you look at what he's done recently, it's been horrendous. He's allowed 25 earned runs in 24 July innings. That's a 9.38 ERA in the month. 39 hits and 12 walks. That's a 2.13 whip. He's been just knocked all over the yard in July. The Royals are not a world-beating offense, but they are average against right-handed pitching. They rank right about 15th in the league. Pavetta's allowed 7 or more hits in every start. He's also allowed a run in the first inning in 4 of his last 5. And that's not just a run, that's at least a run. I took some notes on it game by game. His last 5 first innings, 3 runs, 2 runs, 4 runs, 0 runs, 1 run. So it's a consistent thing with him that teams get after him early in the game. I look at Chris Bubich on the other side. He threw 6 first innings in July. 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. And I look at Bubich overall in July, and he may have figured something out. He over the last month, I'm trying to find the number here, but he's actually been quite good. He typically will still allow 1, 2, maybe 3 earned runs, but he's been serviceable. 3 or fewer earned runs in 6 straight starts and 10 of his last 12. So I don't think he's going to dominate, but I think he'll get through his clean first inning, and I think he'll give them a chance. And if he gets through a clean first inning, which it'll be the top of the first with Boston, I think it's amazing value on plus 150 with the Royals to score first, given how poor Nick Pivetta has been, especially early in games. Funny thing with Bubich, too. I mentioned that he's allowed 3 or fewer runs in 10 of his last 12. That's all fine and good. He's also allowed 2 or more runs in 11 of his last 12. So it's pretty rare that you get a guy like that where you know exactly what's coming based on what he's done over the last 2 months. And the advanced metrics, the standard metrics, all of it's bad. But it's been better recently, and it's been a lot worse recently for Pivetta. I think the Royals on the money line at plus 106 are pretty tempting as well. Both of these bullpens are absolutely awful. That's part of why I like the over here on the full game. The 2 bullpens both rank in the bottom 5 since July 15th. I prefer Kansas City to score first at plus 150 to the over just because I think it's amazing value on it. You're basically just betting on Bubich to throw a scoreless top of the first. And I think the over is pretty good as well at plus money. So those are kind of the 2 angles that I found here that I like quite a bit.
I like it. I mean, I really, I think they're great points. And if I were to go any direction, those would be the directions. I just have some conflicting signals. Sure. Again, I'll get off of a show like this and I revisit some stuff. And you may see something where I put a post up at 3, 4 o'clock where there's some added plays.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I appreciate you joining today. A lot of fun.
It was my pleasure. I'm sorry I made the show longer because I should have warned you. If you added me, it's going to equal length. I like to speak. I like to talk. I
don't mind it, man. I got nowhere to be. So as far as one of the things I like to do is at the end of the show, I'll kind of just list out what my picks are one more time. The picks I gave out on the show today, San Diego on the run line -1.5. That comes in at -125. A couple picks on Cardinals game 2. Game 2 Cardinals team total over 4.5. Run line -1.5 comes in at plus 130. I like Houston first 5 innings, laying the half run on the run line at -130. I like the Detroit Tigers first 5 team total over 1.5. That comes in at -105. I like the Blue Jays on the money line -120, as well as Blue Jays Twins no runs in the first inning at -125. I like Boston and Kansas City over 9 at plus 105, and I like Kansas City to score first at plus 150.
All right. And let me give you my early plays again. Well, it's too late. It's too late for the Pirates and Brewers because that's already started, but they're scoreless, I think, in the second, and we gave that at under 8. I gave you the Cardinals game 1 money line -155 versus the Cubs. I gave you the Padres versus Rockies over 7.5. We gave you the White Sox. What was the money line on the White Sox again? I didn't write it.
-135.
Yeah, and we're getting so we gave you the White Sox at -135 on the money line, and that was really that was all I gave as official plays. Go to sportsmapelite.com, subscribe for $19.99 a month. The early plays, you got them. I might be playing with some stuff, some additional plays beyond what I gave here for the afternoon slate, and those will be available at sportsmapelite.com, and they'll be up by between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern time today.
Sounds good. All right, Joe. Well, I appreciate you joining today. It was a ton of fun. Hopefully, we get a chance to do it sometime soon. Yeah, we'll go ahead and sign off from here. I always like to remind the audience at the end of the show, the Angels are from Anaheim, not Los Angeles. Also, I got to put it out there. Rest in peace to Vin Scully. That guy was everything in my childhood. Just growing up a Dodger fan. My dad's childhood.
Farmer John Sausage. What else can I say, right?
Yeah. So
come on, you must remember Farmer John Sausage.
Yeah. So yeah, just obviously kind of a heartbreaking last couple of days for Dodger fans and for baseball, but we're gonna make some money tonight and have some fun with it. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you next week.